Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTG Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is Mono Blue Wins. So if you noticed last week, I actually ran an Azurius favorable wins deck, and it did okay on the stream. I did like the build a lot, but I kept hearing comments, or I kept seeing comments, rather, that were saying they wanted the deck to be a little bit faster, a little bit more aggressive, and so that is what this build is right here. It's got an extremely low curve, it's very fast on the play, and it can of course win very quickly. But before I get into the video, make sure to hit the like on the video if you like it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell right beside the subscription bar to know when we upload a new video on the channel and when we go live on the stream right here on YouTube. But without further ado, let's get right into it. We have 4 Ornithopter, a 0-mana 0/2 Thopter with flying. So of course a 0/2 with 0 mana cost is super good for us because we have favorable wins 4 of in the deck that can actually give us a +1/+1 each time there's a favorable wins on the spot. So let's say we have a 1 mana play and a 0 mana play on turn 1, we can get a Thopter and another Thopter perhaps on turn 1, and then next turn have a favorable wins coming out, swinging in for 3. Ornithopter is just one of those cards where it kind of feels like it's kind of not doing anything, but it can be a blocker for us, and it is an awesome way to start off a match if we know we have favorable wins or we're drawing into favorable wins. Moving up from Ornithopter though, we have 4 Hope of Jirapur. This is a 1-mana 1/1 legendary artifact creature Thopter. It's a 4 of with flying. Sacrifice it until your next turn. Target player who was dealt combat damage by it this turn can't cast non-creature spells. So in the 4 to 5 turn slot for our opponent, if they're playing white, we have the Settle the Wreckage play against us, we have Fumigate against us, we have Sweltering Suns on turn 3 if they're a red deck. Hope of Jirapur actually helps us a lot, kind of like push on the aggro as we kind of play out our match. And there's a 4 of here because one of the best ways to use this card is to get in, sacrifice it, then play another one back to back to back. That way our opponent is completely locked down while we get on our damage turn over turn. Hope is great, and it's a 4 of here. So we have 8 Thopters so far in the Mono Blue Wins deck. So let's move on from this. We have 4 Siren Stormtamer. This was in the Azurius wins as well. It's a 1-mana 1/1 Siren Pirate Wizard with flying. Of course, you can sacrifice it and counter target spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. So while we're not really here for that secondary ability, we're just here for the 1-mana 1/1 flyer. The secondary ability is nice if we have, say, a Stormfleet Aerialist that's kind of pumped up a lot and doing a lot of damage turn over turn. We can actually use Stormtamer to kind of cancel out any kind of ability that's trying to kill that card. So Stormtamer is good for us on the curve, and it's good for us as far as a utility in the mid to late game for spot removal. Moving up though, we have 4 Skyship Plunderer. This is an interesting pick for him. We have a 2-mana 2/1 human pirate with flying. Whenever Skyship Plunderer, there we go, deals combat damage to a player for each kind of counter on a target permanent or player, give that permanent or player another counter of that kind. So we have a Skyship Aerialist on, or Stormfleet Aerialist rather, in the deck here, a 4 of, and we also have a Planeswalker. We'll get to that in just a minute in the deck. So Skyship Plunderer can actually give us another counter on top of those, and make the Aerialist either a larger or make our Planeswalker larger as well to be able to ultimate off quicker. So it's actually a 2/1 coming in, and it can turn into a 3/2 on the turn it's played. And I think just for that and having flying, it's pretty good. Moving on from this, we have 4 Stormfleet Aerialists. We've got a lot of 4 ofs here. A 2-mana 1/2 human pirate with flying and raid, and of course it gets a +1/+1 counter on it if you attacked with a creature this turn. So it can come in as a 2/3, and with a favorable wins, it is a 3/4. So it's already a 2-mana 3/4 on the turn it's played, most likely. Its Stormfleet Aerialist is just a fantastic card for us. Fantastic on the curve, and again, it's a really great aggressive beater that can actually get counters thanks to the Skyship Plunderer. But the last 3 creatures in the actual deck, we have 3 Dreamcaller Siren. Again, this is a 4-mana 3/3 Siren Pirate with flash and flying, and Dreamcaller Siren can only block creatures with flying, but when it enters the battlefield, you can tap up to 2 target non-land permanents your opponent controls if you control a pirate. So we have the Stormtamer and the Aerialist in the deck, as well as the Plunderer. That's a pirate as well, keep that in mind. The Stormcaller is actually, or the Dreamcaller rather, is going to come in and tap creatures down or non-land permanents down when we actually need it to happen. So we can actually last an additional turn. Let's say we're up against a Glorybringer style deck. They're going to, as soon as they go into combat, they're going to exert, kill something. We can, before combat happens, get out the Dreamcaller, tap that down, and then swing out for the win if that's the case. But that is all the creatures in the deck. We have 23 in total. The Planeswalker in the deck is actually 2 Jace Cunning Castaway. It's a 3-mana, 3 loyalty Planeswalker. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player this turn, draw a card, then discard a card. That's the +1. -2 is create a 2/2 blue illusion creature token with, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell, sacrifice it. And -5, create 2 tokens that are copies of Jace Cunning Castaway except they are not legendary. So Jace is actually super fun for us. It's a really great card draw mechanic, and it can kind of be a attacking magnet for us too in the mid to late game once it gets up in loyalty counters, because our opponent really doesn't want this card to kind of go off, because once it duplicates itself, we can +1 and -2 at the same time and make a 2/2 blocker, and also have our cards where we can, when we get in, we actually draw a card and discard a card. So Castaway is actually great for us at filtering through our deck, giving us card advantage, and as well giving us a blocker if we really need it. And also it's like super cheap, guys. I think in paper it's like maybe $8. It's a crazy cheap Planeswalker for the deck. Moving on from this though, we have 3 Chart a Course, a 2-mana sorcery, draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless you attack with a creature this turn. So of course our deck is all about being aggressive and getting in there turn over turn. Chart a Course is going to be perfect for us to get in there turn over turn. It's just fantastic. Moving on though, we have 2 Perilous Voyage, a 2-mana instant, return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. If its converted mana cost was 2 or less, scry 2. So this is a fantastic card. It's basically a bounce card for us. But if we're up against a more aggressive strategy, like a mono red or Raminap red, things like that, if we bounce something that has a converted mana cost 2 or less, we actually get to scry as well. So I actually like this over unsummoned for that reason. Now, sometimes that won't always go off for us. So if you feel more comfortable with just using unsummoned in this spot, I think that's fine too. But it does hit non-land permanent also, so you can actually bounce a Planeswalker or something like that that's about to go off. That's also important for us too. So Perilous Voyage is super good for us, and that's why it's 2 up in the deck. And the last 2 cards in the deck, besides lands and enchantments, is 2 Baral's Expertise, a 5-mana sorcery. Return up to 3 target artifacts and or creatures to their owner's hand. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So that's basically everything in our deck besides Baral's Expertise again. And it's a fantastic way to kind of get the tempo play on our opponent. Now we have River's Rebuke in the sideboard, we can go over that too. But Baral's Expertise in the main board is actually quite good against the Godfellow's Gift matchup. It's good against the aggro matchup, and it's also good against any kind of token strategy matchup where we can just kind of bounce their creatures into oblivion. But the last 4 cards of the main board besides land is 4 Favorable Winds. You know it's in here. 2-mana enchantment. Creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. Of course, this is an aggressive deck with flying, and my Favorable Winds is just what the deck is actually built for. It's fantastic. It's really fast, and it makes us the winner most of the time, especially when it comes in turn over turn if we get to stack them. So that's awesome for us. Moving on to lands though, we have 2 Field of Ruin because we have cards like Azcanta, Legion's Landing, things like that. Field of Ruin is going to be in here as a 2 of, and of course we can sacrifice it, destroy target non-basic land, and then we both get to search for lands onto the battlefield. It's quite good for us. Then we have 1 Scavenger Grounds. Godfellow's Gift is kind of coming back in a big way in the testing grounds, and I think Scavenger Grounds being a 1-off here is just kind of representing that way to deal with that graveyard interaction for us. And then the last part is 21 Islands. We actually just have straight 21 islands. I thought of maybe putting some Evolving Wilds in here, but I think it was actually kind of slow for us. We wanted to make sure our lands were coming in untapped and kind of getting in as soon as possible with our creatures. But that is the full 60. The full 60 is of course super aggressive, super low to the ground, and going to be very fast at getting in damage turn over turn. But let's say we're up against a heavy removal strategy or a board wipe strategy. What can we do? Let's go to the sideboard here. We have 3 Dive Down. Dive Down is basically our Blossoming Defense in blue. It's a 1-mana instant. Target creature you control gets +0/+3 and gains hexproof until end of turn. Of course, it doesn't get +2/+2, so it doesn't have the ability to kind of trade with some creatures sometimes, but having it be able to have the ability to kind of just like hold off, give it hexproof, and also kind of block something like a Glorybringer, or kind of have them use a Glorybringer against us and then we use a Dive Down instead. I think that's great for us. Again, it's an instant, so it can be used at any time. It's just a fantastic combat trick for us on the play and on their turn. So moving on, we have 4 Negate. Again, a 2-mana instant, counter target non-creature spell. So this is going to be up against any kind of heavy removal strategy, any kind of control strategy as well, if they're kind of getting against us really quickly. I think Negate is also really good against like the Godfellow's Gift strategy as well, thanks to the card like Refurbish. That's going to be fantastic. And of course, shut down any kind of Planeswalker that's coming our way. Next up, we have 2 Aegis for Harvester, a 3-mana 3/5 vehicle with flying. Of course, it gets lifelink into an turn if we pay 1 energy because it gives us 2 energy, and it has crew for 1. So the crew cost is actually quite low for us, and it's a flyer, so it can actually be a 4/6 coming in. We can actually destroy a Heart of Kiran, which is very good. But it's also a lifelink, and that's kind of why it's in the sideboard here. Life is very important for us in the mid to late game, especially if we're not curving out as much as we need to be. So against a more aggressive strategy, Aegis for Harvester may be coming in against that to make sure we get some life gain in the mid to late game and kind of last the match. Next up, we have 4 Lookout's Dispersal, a 3-mana instant. Lookout's Dispersal costs 1 mana less to cast if you control a pirate. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. So we actually have 15 pirates in the main board out of the 23 creatures in the deck. And Lookout's Dispersal is most likely just going to be costing 2 mana for us. So it's a 2-mana counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. So it's a very good removal spell for us, very good counter control, and very good against an aggro strategy where they're trying to curve out turn over turn again and again. And the last 2 cards in the sideboard is 2 River's Rebuke. Again, this will be replacing Baral's Expertise in the main board just in case we need that. that to kind of balance a more token-based strategy. But it's a 6-mana sorcery. Return all non-land permanents target player controls to their owner's hand. So that includes, you know, all tokens, all artifacts, all land, not all lands, all planeswalkers, things like that. River's Rebuke is a great card for us, and again, a great way to kind of like even out the match if we know we're going to win that next turn. But that is the full 75, guys. Let's go to the list here. On MTG Traders, this is coming to a ridiculously low 22 tickets. This is a super budget deck for us. On paper, I think it's coming to about $43, which is still pretty cheap as well. But the deck is all about being super fast, super effective, and kind of getting in there turn over turn to where we can kind of lock down our opponent by turn 6 or 7 and kind of even out the match for the win. But let me know what you thought, guys. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and any kind of changes you might have. I had a kind of a little bit of a hard time kind of picking what kind of sideboard pieces I want to use. I know Essence Scatter might have been something I want to bring in there as well, but I did think Lookout's Dispersal was just going to be good enough for us anyway. But of course, let me know what you guys think. Like the video if you liked it, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell right beside the subscription button to know when we upload a new video on the channel and when we go live on the stream right here on YouTube. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.